There's a knock on the door that every single Palestinian citizen of Israel, including ourselves, is terrified to get. In this season, we've sat a lot with activists. Today in this episode, we're going to dive into the legal. We're sitting with Hadeel, a Palestinian lawyer within Israel, to understand and look at the developments the past 2 years, and also to learn our rights as Palestinian citizens of Israel. I'm your host, Amira.
And I'm your host, Ibrahim.
And this is UTTN, the podcast. Ahla wa sahla, everybody, to another episode of UTTN, the podcast. And if you've been tuning into this season, you know that each and every episode we have an amazing guest and with a focus on Palestinians and Palestinian women in general. And today is no different. Today we're joined by Hadeel. Hadeel, thank you for being with us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for hosting me.
No, thank you for being with us. We're going to jump straight into the first segment. Our first segment is when we get to know our guest a little bit more, and then we'll jump into the two other segments where we get to know your work more deeply. But first, we're going to ask, who are you? And the way that we're doing it is that we're asking 3 times. Each time you answer with 1 word, and then we dissect. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. So, Hadeel, who are you?
A Palestinian.
And if I'm going to ask you again, who are you?
An activist.
And one last time, who are you, Hadeel?
A lawyer.
A lawyer. Okay. So Palestinian, activist, lawyer. We usually ask, is there a certain pattern? Like, why is there like Palestinian has to be first? Is there a certain sequence to it?
Honestly, yeah, because that's where the other parts came from. يعني being Palestinian, a Palestinian citizen of Israel specifically, has led me to making choices يعني throughout my life to be an activist in different phases, whether it was when I was a student or even as a child. يعني I would participate in different demonstrations or activism spaces. And then being a lawyer, which is another way of being active in the field of supporting rights and promoting the things I want to change in my environment and in my in the life of the people that are around me and in my personal life as well.
We're going to get into the work because I assume activism, like you just said, the activism and your actual career, which is being a lawyer, is very much intertwined. In this season, we brought a lot of Palestinians that said one of their 3 words is Palestinian. So I'm really interested. You're from Sakhnin. What does being Palestinian mean to you? How does it meet you?
First of all, being from Sakhnin يعني is part of the forming stages يعني or forming reasons of my Palestinian identity. Sakhnin was part of يعني historic moments of the Palestinian struggle, such as Land Day. So basically, as a kid, even if I didn't form the awareness or يعني the knowledge regarding my personal Palestinian identity and how I view it in my daily life and how it reflects, being from Sakhnin يعني has made me a person that is interested in the Palestinian narrative and in the Palestinian cause. يعني as a kid, my parents would take me to the demonstration each year regarding Land Day.
You're speaking a lot about Land Day, which is a specific, important day for many Palestinians. What can you tell our listeners that don't know, what is it?
It's a day that Palestinians in 3 main cities, Derhanna, Arabi, and Sakhnin, which is called today the Land Day Triangle, decided to demonstrate against a plan to confiscate their lands. Then it was called Area 6, to confiscate their lands for building military bases. And basically it was a struggle that succeeded. يعني unlike a lot of struggles that we see today, يعني it marked a success in that sense, in the sense of taking activism and demonstrating for your rights and against things that you oppose in a civil move, which succeeded. And I think another event which I didn't witness personally, I was born before, but I didn't witness it as a conscious person. It was October 2000 events where people from Sakhneen were killed by the police, by the authorities. And until today, and I think it affects the general consciousness of the people of Sakhneen. يعني whether you want to be a person that is involved in politics or not involved in politics or involved in activism or not, يعني you are forced to see those scenes, and it shapes the collective view of the people in the city.
So we're talking about October 2000.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. We're touching upon a lot of like political, historic. Well, it's recent history, but because we, in many episodes, both our guests and Ibrahim and I talk about how non-political our upbringing was. Like our parents are either too scared or want to live life. And many Palestinians share that. So, and they turn out to be activists, like they turn out to do things, but their political awareness, political education is later in life. So you're saying that your parents were political. They took you to demonstrations. They took you to witness what is going on. Do you think that's something special to Sakhneen, or do you think your family is different in that way? Like why was it that for you?
No, I don't think it's special for my family. And it's part of the collective way that people in Sakhneen, and I think in other Palestinian towns and cities inside of Israel live, because whether or not you want to define yourself as a Palestinian, or whether or not you want to remember that you're Palestinian on a daily basis, the reality makes you remember it and makes you more interested in delving into the different aspects of that identity. Yani I think that the events after October 2023 and the political persecution of Palestinians and the general atmosphere that was created in that context makes us remember daily. Whether we want to remember that we are Palestinians or to admit that we relate to that identity or not, you are made to remember. You are always being pointed at as the Palestinian, the enemy. And I think it's not specific to my personal experience, but the choices you make in life after that, it's what shapes the way you view that identity and the way you develop it and continue to be related to it.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, and I think it's becoming more and more. It depends on I think it depends from family to family and from location to location. Like growing up in Jerusalem, in Sheikh Jarrah, it's not that I didn't know that I wasn't a Palestinian or that there wasn't an occupation. I just didn't understand one, and we'll talk about the legal aspect, but I didn't understand anything about the legal aspect. I didn't understand what was considered an occupation, what was normal and what's not normal. I assume even Palestinian citizens of Israel think that suppressing what they have to say is normal, and they think that, all Palestinian citizens of Israel do that, so that's life. And understanding that it's actually being taken away from them and that there is better and we can get to better is part of the political education that people get people to become activists, to delve into the legal world, maybe. But I'm interested to know, is there a specific time, event, something that happened that made you become not just aware, but active about it, to become the second word, which is activist?
First of all, I want to relate to something you just said, that you couldn't give names to the reality you're living, like calling it an occupation or giving the legal definitions of the things you experience and see and witness. And I think that's mutual to all of us. And it's mutual in the sense that, okay, maybe I would call myself a Palestinian when I'm 5 years old or 6 years old, but knowing the meaning of that and the implications of that on my identity and personal life comes later. Now I'll answer your question. I think at university it's the first time I had to analyze and to understand the reality I live in the terminology I use now, and also in the actions I make now. For the first time, I had to sit with the Palestinians from different contexts and to discuss different things that we view differently and get to a mutual understanding of the situation we're discussing, and to get the mutual solutions.
Yeah, if we're talking about Sakhnin, I think the only context that I heard about Sakhnin in the context of Jerusalem was football. And I have a lot of family members that are teachers. So they would study in a college or in a Palestinian university, and they would want to يعملوا مزاولة مهنة to equate their degree. And a lot of it would be exams in Sakhnin. So that's where I would hear the word Sakhnin. So I would think about it in the term of education. It's like, oh, there's a lot of teachers in Sakhnin as a kid. So until you meet actually somebody that is from Sakhnin, and it's like, there's way more. Like you understand the context of land day, you understand all the political, historical things that have to do with the people and the part of the land that is Sakhnin.
Exactly. And I studied at Tel Aviv University, and I had to live in Ramat Aviv, which is a place that is wealthy, and people there live a good life relatively to the life that I used to live in Sakhnin. Although people in Sakhnin are mostly educated, they go to universities or have jobs after that. But for the first time, I was living in a really wealthy place, but also meeting people from different contexts such as Jaffa, which is a place that we romanticize about as a whether it was in the context of urban life for Palestinians, but also about the history of it, relating to oranges and the things that people say about Jaffa before the Nakba. But meeting people the same age as me from Jaffa,
completely different.
It's completely different, and suddenly you understand that they find it hard to write their messages in Arabic, for example. Although,
yeah, I've noticed that
they have a really strong Palestinian identity, but on the other hand, there are different things that I wouldn't even imagine in my daily life to meet or to hear about or to experience. Until I got to university and had to meet people from different contexts. And then you also learn about their daily life and their struggle with Amidar, the housing company, which now is responsible for kicking out a lot of Palestinians from their homes.
Yeah, a lot of people, when they hear the term ethnic cleansing, we don't refer to anything, like people think that you don't refer to anything within the 48 territories, and not Jaffa specifically. But I've very recently started to understand ethnic cleansing happening because of what you're mentioning in Jaffa.
Yeah, so during my studies, I met people from Jaffa who experienced that in their daily life. Their neighbors got kicked out of their homes, their family. So then you also learn that it's not a historical thing that we are talking about. It's a thing that's actually happening. But also learning in a Jewish city, or in a Jewish actually يعني academic institution where and Tel Aviv University is known to be liberal. They emphasize the critical thinking aspect. They want you to criticize everything, but they never help you criticize your daily life, your reality, in the sense of I studied about the whole spectrum of the Israeli society and heard about the struggles of the Mizrahim, the struggles of the different of the different groups in the Israeli society, and also about my struggle. But it's never telling my story from my eyes, from the eyes of people that are similar to me or come from a similar context and that have the right standing point. So during university, I had to make more effort in order to take the things I'm learning to my personal space and to my personal experience, and also the collective experience, of course, of Palestinians. So there I was active in the Arab Law Students Forum. It's called El Muntada. And there we worked with also other forums, other Palestinian forums who worked in the different fields. And we tried to create alternative knowledge, to study the things that we are studying in the classrooms, but through our eyes. And to do lectures, to bring lecturers from outside of the university in order to create or recreate the things we are learning from our perspective. But we weren't also working only in the context of the university. We try to be connected to the things that are happening outside. So, for example, during 2021 in the Sheikh Jarrah uprising or dignity uprising, Habit al-Karami, we were part of the collective movement that was making spaces and lectures and participating in demonstrations. We didn't see ourselves as we saw ourselves basically as connected to the things happening outside, and not only in the academic classroom and in the academic sphere.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just retrospective learning, it's continuous, what
exactly.
You're saying. Do you think it's the same? You studied in a Israeli institution, Haifa, right?
I mean, I only did my master's there, and it was during COVID.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so it's a different experience.
Yeah, it was virtual, so I don't have, and I was in the international program, so I had no Israeli Jews with me.
Oh, wow.
So I cannot relate in that dynamic between the students, but I have friends who studied in university, and you see the dynamics that exist there, that it's I mean, in general, it shows that I think just looking at universities as a place of, seeing the society, it's a microscope into a lot of things that we witness in our reality. Differences in when we go to university, and difference of age that people go to university. We go relatively young. After high school, Jewish kids go at much later age, after army, traveling, so there's already a distance and a gap there. And even in dynamics, even in Haifa University, you see Jewish kids, Arab kids. There's no, real connection between the two groups as groups. As individuals, yes, but not as groups of the two communities combined. There is no dialogue about each other's identity. And at the same time, Hadeel has the privilege, or for us in general, as Palestinian citizens of Israel, we have that skill, that privilege to have that door to learn about all these things about the Jewish Israelis, about the Mizrahi struggle, about the Ashkenazi struggle, about all these things, and know how to deal with it, and know how to deal with where they come from. They don't have that at all. It's non-existent, and it's unopened doors that universities don't want to deal with. The Israeli system doesn't want to open up. Is not there. The entire system is not there to function in a way that will, create that connection. I mean, even Arabic language in schools, which is super basic, hasn't been implemented, not without a reason, regardless of who the government was, left or right. It's not without a reason. So we don't know. They don't know us. That's, I think, the biggest fear that exists. And that shows in university, throughout the entire education system.
The third word that you said is a lawyer, which is part of your activism, but also your professional career. And I think we should dive deep into it with the second segment. But do you have any questions before we move on?
Maybe before we dive into your work as a lawyer, you studied law, but maybe the question would be why deciding to practice human rights law? I have a friend who visited me here from abroad, from the US, and when she came, she long-standing, following up everything that has to do with the Palestinian people, reality, we always talk about our situation, and she really cares for it. And when she met one of my friends who's a lawyer, the first question was, "Oh, I'm sure you're a human rights lawyer." Right? That's the perception of a pro-Palestinian from the West, that if you're at law, of course you're a human rights lawyer. But she's like a lawyer at a yacht insurance company, okay? For the rich sector. And it caught her by surprise. It was like, oh, really? I would expect that, if you're a Palestinian and you have the ability to practice law, you guys are all going to do that, but it's not. Obviously, it's not the case. There's a massive spectrum of fields within law, and also it's a very challenging sector to choose for you. Human rights law is not like any other practice within the practice of law. Do you feel like it's a target? It's not the easiest place to be when you're fighting for Palestinian rights. You're putting yourself in front of the entire system. You know what I mean? It's not an easy choice. So how, first, do you feel that it's not a regularity, or do you feel that this is a unique thing to study human rights law for our community? And why did you choose to do that?
So the short answer is I like disappointment. I want to be disappointed every day. Disappointed every day. But the actual answer is, so when I first started studying law, I was very interested in criminal law. And usually people, when they hear criminal law, they don't connect it to human rights, but it's connected to the most important right, which is the right to freedom. And that's why I after my studies, I started working in the criminal field. But after October 7th, I felt that I needed to be part of the bodies that are protecting my people, my collective. And actually, me, myself, I was incited against after October 7th for my personal opinions. So I decided to take that experience into something that I would build good things from, and to defend the people that are in the place that I was in when I was incited against.
Can we talk about that? If that's okay, can we just pause for a second and ask, what's the incitement that you're saying happened against you? What does that exactly mean?
So basically, shortly after October 7th, I think in early November, a Jewish lawyer decided to take pictures from my personal profile on Facebook and post a post on Instagram saying that I'm a Hamas supporter for pictures that I've posted long time before October 7th. Even one of them included an invite to a demonstration which had a slogan of a queer scream for freedom. And it can't be connected to Hamas in any way. So he posted that picture with a call for people to inform the authorities, specifically the Bar Association, the police, the different ministries, so in order to revoke my citizenship, and saying that I'm a Hamas supporter. That post was there for a few days. People also incited against me in the comments. And eventually it was deleted. I'm not sure if it was deleted by Instagram or by the person who posted it. But it wasn't a pleasant experience. But what was more unpleasant was the feeling of helplessness, and feeling helpless in the sense that I can't even report this to the police. So if we remember, shortly before that time, Hadeel Abu Salih, for example, was arrested for posting, for going and wanting to file a complaint against people that were threatening her and inciting against her, and she was arrested during the moment or during filing that complaint. So, and as a Palestinian citizen of Israel at that time, I knew also that I had no one to help me in this situation, and just needed to sit at home for 2 weeks and wait for the storm to pass, basically. And after that, I decided that I needed to change. First of all, I moved from Tel Aviv to Haifa and started working in the human rights field.
And I think that's the best way to transition to our second segment, where we ask you, what do you do? And as you mentioned right before we started this, is that you made the choice to go to the human rights sector in order to help others that are feeling helpless, particularly, post October 7th being feeling like a target.
And to help herself.
To help herself and others as Palestinian citizens of Israel who feel that we become a target, that you cannot speak. So can you tell us, first of all, about the organization that you work for, about Adalah, which means justice in English, and what do you do there?
So basically, I'm a lawyer in the political and civil rights unit at Adalah. Adalah is a human rights organization. It's a Palestinian human rights organization based in Israel. Our main mandate is strategic litigation. We work in 3 main fields, as I mentioned before: civil and political rights, land and planning, and social and economical rights. And since October 7th, we've, as the state was in a state of emergency, we've also been in a state of emergency, dealing with a lot of cases of people being persecuted by the different institutions and the different bodies in the state. I've been mainly working in the field of freedom of expression, defending people, whether it was in the context of arrests or in the context of the criminal procedure after that. And also we've been representing students in front of academic institutions, workers in front of workplaces, since there has been also work terminations after October 7th for Palestinians who only dare to express their opinions and sometimes didn't express anything at all, and that sometimes meant that you are necessarily identifying with the enemy, or that you are the enemy.
So, particularly when you talk about that, when you talk about freedom of speech, first of all, for our audience, particularly those who speak Arabic, the Adalah podcast, we've had the pleasure to listen to, and it was really insightful to get the depth of understanding what articles in the law are being used in order to do all of this. Since October 7th, as you mentioned, we've witnessed a significant rise in arrests for Palestinian citizens for speaking their mind on social media, which was also a precedence that the social media would be considered a public space, because in order to consider incitement, it's going to have to be in the public sphere. And it was a precedent in Israel that social media has, become put under the statement of public sphere. So things are changing while we're talking, on reality on the ground. But that change also started from before. It started from May 2021. It started from the protests that we've witnessed since the Sheikh Jarrah. And I have a question that since we have an expert today, we have an expert on law, on freedom of speech. I think something changed in May 2021. First of all, for our Jewish audience, for them, for a lot of people, May 2021 is guardian of the wall for them. It's what happened. It's the war with Hamas, rather than everything that was happening inside, which for us is completely the opposite. Hamas jumped on a bandwagon of something that was happening inside. And it was comfortable for the state to shift it towards Hamas rather than to deal what's happening on the ground. But one protest stands out for Palestinian citizens of Israel, which is the protest in Haifa. And in that protest, the feeling of Palestinian citizens, and I have personal friends who were in that protest, that they were there for 10 minutes, no incitement, nothing illegal. Police comes along and violently disperses the protests. And for a lot of people in the north, and I think you can tell me if I have these same feelings, is if even this protest in the so-called city of coexistence and all these things, if we're not allowed to speak in a democracy, our voice in a peaceful way, and not to be prevented from doing so, what are you supposed to do? And that creates that feeling of being choked to the point of you explode. Not to justify the explosion, but actually just the explosion, for the most of it, actually came on us. It destroyed a lot of the towns, the Arab towns themselves, rather than anything than others. But that feeling of being choking got out there. But that protest, the Israeli media looks at it and says the protest was illegal. Can you explain to us, to the audience, what's an illegal protest and what's a legal one? Can we create a protest without notifying the police? Do I need their approval? Where is that thin line that they keep playing with that I don't get?
So basically, the Israeli law specifies the situation that you need to get a permission from the police to carry out a protest. And it's when three conditions are in that protest. If you have more than 50 people participating, and if there are people speaking or giving speeches, and if it's outside. So you need those three conditions to be fulfilled in order to have a protest that needs a permission. But if those three conditions are not fulfilled, then you can have a protest without getting a permission from the police.
Hypothetically, if I have 200 people, but we're doing a silent vigil, I can just do it.
Yes. But what we have been seeing, and actually, and I think
technically speaking,
technically speaking, and legally speaking,
I can do it.
But the events of 2021, I think it had a different. It was a different show, than what we are seeing today, because Palestinians inside of Israel protest and express their opinions, even though in a lot of times it ended in violent arrests. But we had the right to protest for hours in different spaces. Me personally, I participated in demonstrations in Haifa, in Yafa, and different places, and the police would give us would grant us the right to protest for a long time. But what happened after, for example, the campaign for that was called Law and Order campaign, which included carrying carrying out hundreds of arrests against people that participated in protests, basically uncovered the apartheid policies, because basically, even though Palestinians were allowed to protest during a specific time, after the war ended, everyone that was suspected to do anything in those protests was arrested, and a lot of people were interrogated in Shabak interrogations, and they are the testimonies today say that they even had to admit things they didn't do. So basically, we are seeing people that are being sentenced for 9 or 10 years in prison for participating in events in 2021. Although they themselves claim that they were made to admit after they were tortured to admit things they didn't do, and that affected how people يعني continued saying their right to protest after 2021. But the situation after October 7th is so different because the police basically declared a de facto ban on protests even before Palestinians considered organizing any protest or any form of activism to go against the war on Gaza. So basically, the High Commissioner of the Police published on the police's TikTok account on October 18th, 23. He published a statement saying that any Palestinian that wants to express their solidarity with Gaza, they are welcome to do it, but we will be sending them in buses to Gaza. And that was even before Palestinians organized any demonstration. And that threat was carried out or was made through a day after in Haifa. There was a protest in Haifa. People were arrested on their way to the protest. And the people who got to the protest and wanted to start protesting were arrested before doing anything, before holding the signs, before chanting chants, before even forming an idea to do anything. And on October 19th, 23, in Al-Fahim, there was a protest right after the bombing in the Baptist hospital in Gaza. And there they arrested 11 people. 9 of them were released a few days later. 2 of the people arrested in that protest still face charges till today for incitement to terrorism and identification with a terror organization. We represent them in that case. And the absurd thing about this case is that they are being tried for chants that Palestinians have been using for over 50 years. So let's say in Land Day, Palestinians used the same chants. On October 6th, 23, if there was a protest, Palestinians would use the same chants. And the more absurd is that even after their arrest and after the indictment list was filed, people kept chanting the same chants. And no one was arrested for saying those slogans. So we've also seen an incoherent behavior and policies from the authorities that also makes you think as an activist or as a Palestinian in general, that you don't know what's wrong and what's right, what to do, what are the tools that you can use.
Which is something that, when I talk about the spectrum of identity, you can see it clear in that sense of, because you're always worried about these places where you're placed you never know when you cross the invisible line in the sand, you do whatever you can to avoid it. Like if I'm going to be showing that I'm overly Palestinian and just Palestinian and have nothing to do with this state, that's a danger. So I avoid that. And at the same time, just showing I'm just Israeli, I have nothing to do with Palestinian, that's its own danger in terms of vis-a-vis your own community. But to say that you're just Palestinian versus a state, it's people don't want to get to the place where you don't know where do I cross this invisible line. So people avoid it. So people don't speak up. People don't express their true feelings, opinions. It's like that study that some people brought to us to talk about how many Arab citizens feel that they're Palestinian. I'm like, how are you talking about a study that talks about the most sensitive terminology and from an Israeli Jewish Israeli study that asks these Arab citizens, tell me if you're Israeli or not? Like, what do you think they're gonna tell you? Like, honestly, like, it's our identity is super complex, but you worry about all these invisible lines, and it becomes a danger for us. And what maybe the audience doesn't grasp is what you said just now, in the concept of in a lot of these arrests, if it was a Jewish Israeli who said it, it would be fine. It'll be maybe, oh, he's a leftist, he's saying these things, but it wouldn't get to the place of being arrested because you wrote something on social media, or fired for it. They might just not like you at the office as they stand out as the lefty, but to fire you for it. But it's because we're looked at differently.
I mean, we see it
at the potential suspects.
Yeah, we see it on Jerusalem Day with the flag march. Yani clear incitement. They're calling death to Arabs. They're calling they are a lot of Islamophobia, talking about Prophet Muhammad, a lot of things about, and not just verbal, but also physical attacks on people, on shop owners, and nothing is really done. Maybe there'll be arrests, but the way that they manage things and the way the demeanor that they interact with people, whether it's a suspect or not a suspect, is completely different. I want to specify something and preface something about what we're talking about, because we're using the word Palestinian very loosely, and I want to make sure that we're talking about Palestinian, like that our audience knows that we're talking about in the context of Israeli civil law for Palestinian citizens of Israel and other citizens of Israel, and it's different kind of legal world when we're talking about the occupied Palestinian territories. It's something completely different, right?
Of course, they are being. You need to act accordingly to the Israeli law. In the West Bank or in Gaza, in the West Bank specifically, they use military law, and in Gaza they don't have authority to try them in most cases. But the Israeli law doesn't apply there also.
Which actually what people, talk about, questions when we talk about the occupation of the West Bank. You're from Ramallah. It's not an Israeli territory, and you can just be dragged and demanded to show up in an Israeli military court. And if you don't comply, it's considered kind of obstruction of order, of law and order, even though it should not be the law that applies to you as a resident of Ramallah under the Palestinian Authority. I
had many colleagues in university that would come. My Hebrew was also trash back then, and they would come, and it would be written, not even printed. It would be written in pen and paper. He's from areas that aren't controlled by the Israeli government, whether it's Ramallah, Tul Karam, or Jenin, those areas. And he would come to me and other Jerusalemites, please read this. I don't understand. What am I supposed to do? And it would say, come to XYZ prison or office. We want to interrogate you. We want to question you for a few things.
Yeah, and we all, as Palestinians, as a people, we're living in different realities and different communities. We face different legal challenges. But in particular, when we talk about, the reality inside Israel, we see the challenge of a system that pretends to give us equal rights and pretends to show that, to the world, we're all equal. But the people who shouted, "May your village burn," for the family of the 4 women who were killed in Tamra were never found magically.
Even though there's a clear shot, a video of their faces.
They recorded it, they posted it. But when it's an Arab citizen, it's completely different. I don't know of any arrests of Jewish Israelis as we've witnessed from Arab citizens since October 2023, and that clearly demonstrates we're far from equal. This the way that the system functions. But I want to ask one question, last legal one for me, if that's okay. Flags. People talk about it. We've had that question before. People ask about it. Is it or is it not illegal to hold a Palestinian flag inside Israel proper?
It's definitely legal to hold a Palestinian flag. It was decriminalized after the Oslo Agreement. And basically, there's the only situation the police can intervene when you hold a Palestinian flag. It's when you can disturb public order, and they can confiscate the flag, but it wouldn't be a reason to arrest you. But we have seen the police continuously confiscating flags and also arresting people for holding flags. But we at Adalah have represented in several cases since October 7th where the court has ruled that holding the Palestinian flag is legal, and the police has the right to, or the authority, to take the flag down or to ask you to take the flag down. They have the authority, but it shouldn't be the sole reason you are arrested. And that actually brings me back to the question you asked previously about protests. I wanted to add that although you could hold a protest that doesn't need a permission from the police officer that would be in the place of the protest has very broad authority to call the protest illegal, to call you to all go home and just leave the place because based on the same claims of disturbing public order. We've represented over 200 people in protests in Haifa specifically, where the police has arrested the demonstrators after participating in legal demonstrations. They would almost in all cases release them the same night with the conditions, and in those cases we would appeal the conditions to court, and in all cases, in all 200 arrests, the court said that the conditions were illegal since the protest itself was legal. And in the early cases the police would bring the people to court, but the court would criticize the police's conduct, and that's why after that they started using other tools such as conditioned release. So basically the police has broad authority to spread the protest,
and also to draw fear in the sense of coming to people's homes, making these arrests, people being blindfolded,
humiliated.
There was an act to humiliate, to suppress, to create that fear. It wasn't we're just doing our job as authority. It was we need to scare these citizens from speaking up.
Of course, I think the first motive after October 7th was viewing Palestinians inside of Israel as the enemy from within, as if it's another front that the Israeli police, the Israeli authorities need to face and need to fight. And it has led to a large scale chilling effect in the Palestinian community. And today people feel monitored all the time. They feel watched by someone somewhere that is looking for any mistake that they would do and would.
Do you? Do you feel targeted?
Of course, whether it was as an individual or as a lawyer, I feel targeted on my personal opinion and also on my work. And I think it's a collective feeling that has brought all of us to not just think 1,000 times before publishing anything. I know the law. I know the limits of the speech I can express or say, but on the other hand, the limits are vague. The limits are always used against us. And it has become clear that when it comes to Palestinians, free speech is almost always limited when it's in the context of criticizing the war, criticizing the government, criticizing the policies that the government is carrying out. But when it comes to Jewish people, free speech is free speech, as if it's as it was put by the Supreme Court or by the law or by the limits of the law. But يعني sometimes even those limits don't apply to Jewish people, as you mentioned before. Inciting against Arabs or inciting to genocide, in most cases, is worse than the posts that people were arrested for. So basically, Palestinians are guilty until proven otherwise. If you're arrested, no matter what claim you bring, no matter what explanation you bring to the post itself or to the expression you expressed, you are always viewed as a suspect, as a person who needs to prove their loyalty, basically, to the state.
Maybe one other example is also that something that we were seeing recently changing in the dealing in the anti-terror laws in Israel, where there's also a change there that we're seeing and it's, if I'm not mistaken, part of the judicial reform, in the sense of enforcing that anyone, if somebody is, excuse me, investigated for any acts that are deemed terror, not just themselves, but also their direct family members are potentially deemed to get deportation even. And that's something that has not, that doesn't exist within the Jewish, dealing with a Jewish person deemed to have acted or to have done any acts of terror.
I want to build up on that question, because I was going to ask that, is what is, because you said that there's a broad definition. It's like a big gray area of what is incitement, what is terror, what is, so in these contexts, even there was people tried, the state tried to, I don't know if it passed or not, maybe you can tell me, the differentiation between the types of rape. If a Palestinian rapes, it can be seen as an act of terror, to make differentiation between, rape is rape. But if it's a Palestinian that does it, it is considered an act of terror. So can you, first, is that true or not? Second is, what is there a direct definition by Israeli law is terror, and how much can they build on that in order to prosecute the person that is committing whatever that definition is, and then their family members or anyone who's related, whether they know that what that person wanted to do, whether it is labeled as terror or not, if they were aware of it, and how far can they go? Okay, so basically, first of all, I think the rape law that you mentioned didn't pass, but it depends on the motive. So basically, if the court decides that your motive was in order to bring fear or to change a political thing in that act, it could be considered a terror act, according to the counterterrorism law. But the counterterrorism law, since it's an Israeli law, it should apply to all citizens. But the way the law is, the things in the law or the terms in the law are defined, makes it easier to apply them to Palestinians mostly. So basically, identification or expressing sympathy with a terror organization. It's an article that has been used broadly after October 7th against Palestinians. And you could identify by posting the flag of the terror organization or posting a famous person from that organization. And in the terror law itself, there is only one a Jewish terror organization, while there are over 30 Palestinian terror organizations. And who gets to decide?
The police, when they arrest you. It depends.
Who gets to decide what's a terror organization or not?
It's the security minister. security minister, and it's an administrative decision. So basically, a few years ago, they decided that six human rights organization, Palestinian human rights organizations were terror organizations. So, and it was an administrative decision. You don't get to see the full evidence. You don't, even if you get to argue against the decision, it's mostly flawed because you don't have the full picture. They get the decision to close the organizations in advance, and then you argue after. And in the case of the six organizations, now any person that used to cooperate with them had to cut ties with those organizations. Sometimes other human rights organizations had to cut ties with those organizations. We're talking about organizations that dealt with the children's rights or الحق الميزان, which work mainly in human rights field. And Israel wanted to stop their work, to stop the way they are uncovering crimes that Israel has been doing. And based on that decision, their work with also international bodies had to be cut and stopped. So going back to to Article 24, which has the incitement and identification, if the Israeli security minister decides that only one Jewish organization is a terror organization, this means that someone identifying with let's say, with any terror act that a Jewish person does, it doesn't mean that it's connected to a terrorist organization. This is an independent person that did a terror act, and then they don't fall under the counter-terrorism law. And we've seen that mostly they use the penal code against Jewish citizens if they even are interrogated for posting expressions or for expressing their opinions. And this has also implications on the arrest, because basically if you are arrested under counter-terrorism law, you are kept in prison as a security prisoner, and then you face the same conditions as a security prisoner. This means being starved. In a lot of cases, we've heard about security prisoners being tortured in the Israeli prison authorities. There also have been cases of death of prisoners. You are prevented from calling your family, from meeting them, and this meant that in most cases people had to accept plea deals, and even if they believe in their innocence and they stand behind the expression they expressed, they needed to take the plea deal in order to stop their suffering. And they can't stay for 8 months just to prove to court that their post falls under freedom of expression. They would decide to take a plea deal in the 8 months and then go out. And it doesn't affect only the person that accepted the plea deal. It makes a legal precedent that would affect each person that would post a similar post in the future.
Listen, it's really so layered, multi-layered, and each and every topic. I know we didn't delve into it, but we talked about it. You sent us a few details to go over the difference between the physical, what is physical crackdown on free speech, or online, or educational, or institutional. I have one more question, and it's more personal than legal, but it's like related. And I'm going to go back to when the three of us, Evelyn's sitting right across from us, when we went to, if you're part of our Patreon, which you should, you know the tea, but we went to a protest at the border of Gaza. and it was declared at a certain point as an illegal protest. And there were, I think, 9 activists that were arrested, amongst whom was Evelyn. And it's a very cynical situation to be in when you have 9 Jewish Israeli activists against whatever you want to call it, war, genocide. They're against the actions of the government, against the actions of the police. And then the court assigns them a Palestinian lawyer. And we're talking about the south. We're talking about Bir Saber, Ashkelon. Like, we're talking about that, Ashdod, sorry. And all that area. And it was really difficult. We saw the Palestinian lawyer, not to say that he was good or bad, but he was struggling and he had to be switched at a certain point because he wasn't getting advanced with the case. And that's with Jewish citizens. So I'm wondering what it's like for you as a Palestinian citizen of Israel, a lawyer, to have to deal with the Israeli system, which we know is like we with our historical context and historical narrative, where you know that some of it is insane. Like you're going to ask permission for a protest against people that are stealing, that are kicking you out, the same law that's kicking you out of your house, or the same law that is killing your family, the same law. It's really, I keep calling it mental gymnastics. It's really hard to understand. So how is it for you to be in that position, to have to say that this is what the Israeli law has to say? Like, if I want to say it from a personal point of view, when during Sheikh Jarrah, or even before, personally, part of our house was demolished. We had the opportunity because we weren't home when it was demolished. So we had the opportunity to go the legal route, and we didn't. But some people like Al Kurd family, for example, they go the legal route. How is it for you to be a Palestinian to combat the Israeli system from within?
I think it's very absurd, on the daily basis. And in most cases, the same way I have to defend it feels like the same way I have to defend my clients, I also have to defend myself, because I'm not only viewed as a lawyer, I'm viewed as a Palestinian. The moment I express something in some different manner than the judge would expect me to express it, then that thing would find its way to the protocol in a very unpleasant way. For example, we represented in the Freedom Flotilla cases, and I knew that my arguments had no chance, but I had to say them, because I first of all, it's my duty to do my best for my clients, and second of all, because I believe that the Israeli law supports my claims. But on the other hand, we were in front of the Israeli court, in front of the magistrate court. I represented 2 Israeli citizens, which were a different case than the other activists, because they have an Israeli citizenship, and then they are under the custody of the Israeli police. And
Is this the same story of the Freedom Flotilla?
Yes.
Okay.
And I really did my legal research before I got to court, and I built an argument that I was so proud of, honestly. And I was so convinced that the judge would accept my argument, because they are right according to the law that I studied, in the Israeli academia, and that I researched before I got to court. And in a very surprising, it wasn't surprising, because we were talking about a very sensitive case for the Israeli court, because just imagine, the Israeli media would publish that the Israeli court released 2 activists that were on the flotilla without conditions or without consequences. So I knew that there are those dangers, but on the other hand, I knew that I was arguing the right arguments on the legal aspect. And after that, I told the judge that I don't think that there are any explanation to this decision except for the political aspect of this case. And the court is not supposed to be a political body. It's supposed to be a body that only works according to the law, according to the authority it's giving, inside the limits of what the law is, allows and doesn't allow. And then the judge actually wrote that it's so unacceptable that a lawyer in Israel would say that the court is a political body. And the Israeli media after that wrote about it as if it was something unacceptable to say, but it was the only explanation really that the court got that decision. And I think that's the main experience after October 7th, that Palestinian lawyers and the court speak different languages, that we speak about a different law. Everything I've learned in university and studied after is irrelevant after October 7th, and we are told that by the judges. For example, once in a hearing I had shortly after October 7th, 2 months after October 7th, I was told by the judge that the precedent that was relevant on October 6th is not relevant today, although the law itself didn't change. But the general atmosphere, the general feeling which was brought into courts has affected the way that we should act and argue, and the terminology that we use. And some Palestinian lawyers also have been facing disciplinary procedures in front of the Bar Association, in most cases for posting an online post that is not related to their profession. And in some cases for expressing opinions in courts or something. But it's a mixed feeling of intimidation, of fear, of over awareness of the things that you say, and knowing that in most cases you will be disappointed. You can be the most successful lawyer, the most intelligent lawyer, and the most to study the argument to the maximum, but it wouldn't affect the result. The result is merely affected by the political atmosphere, the political situation.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We've unfortunately reached the third and final segment of this episode, which is where we ask you about your needs and we ask you, how can we help? So as a lawyer, as a Palestinian citizen of Israel, a lawyer, someone who works with Adalah, how would you like our listeners how could they contribute to your work?
First of all, to be aware and raise awareness regarding the context of the Palestinian citizens of Israel, not to fall for this false narrative of equal citizens, and to actually gain knowledge in this context. And that's why I invite you to check also Adalah's website and to check the topics that we have been tackling and working on since October 7th and before. And donate to Adalah if you like.
Well, we have a couple more minutes.
We do?
We do. I know it's abrupt. Guys, stay tight to your chairs, to your car, wherever you're listening. Because we ended before the needs with something a bit personal from Hadeel, talking about her experience. We're talking about freedom of speech. And there's something that you mentioned at the beginning of this episode, where you said in the 2 weeks after you felt after you were targeted on social media, you had those 2 weeks that you waited out the storm, right? The question first is, did you wait, in quotations, for the knock on the door, potentially?
Actually, yes. For the first few days, I waited for the knock on the door.
From the police, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Amira. And that's, I think, it brings something, we're not, I know it feels cozy and it feels like we're alone here with Ev next to us. But we're speaking, on a public platform. We are all the time putting ourselves out there, talking about our identity, about the reality, about what's happening on the ground, bringing very different perspectives at times, challenging to many of our audiences, and we want to do that. We want to bring these challenges. We want to, deal with our reality and bring our voice into it. But it's always a question of, are we crossing the invisible line in the sand? How has it been like for you, Amira? Because I think sometimes the audience doesn't grasp, and maybe because after everything that Hadeel said, to grasp that it's, particularly for us, it's not the same as a Jewish Israeli who decides to open up a podcast and to talk. We're talking from a very different lens. How's it been for you in that sense? And hold on, I need to cough before you answer, because I'm still sick.
While we're leaving this in.
Now you can speak.
I think we need to talk about how we were talking in the beginning, first season, and how we're talking now, and the difference of fear. I think in the first season, we were very fluffy. We were very what we call dookie, coexistency. We were waiting for official bodies to call things what they are before expressing what we think they are. Even though we say we're unapologetic in that sense, because of fear of our own safety, our family's safety, our friends' safety, we were apologetic about a few things, I would say. But I felt a little bit, even though I was anticipating a knock on the door at some point, even in the first episode, because it was so tense. But I always felt like we were hiding behind the English. I feel like we were like, maximum will attract angry people from abroad. Who are they going to call? But now you're starting to speak more and more in Hebrew. I'm like, I translate all my stories mostly into Arabic. Some of my videos are in Arabic. It's and we get recognized. I walk in the streets in Tel Aviv. People like know who you are. In the beginning it was shukran, toda, mostly toda. And in the West Bank I was recognized once. In airports we're recognized. Like, it's not that we're celebrities, but people that are interested in this know our faces, whether it's for good or for bad. So in a legal sense, I'm afraid of a knock on the door constantly. I'm really paranoid. And from a social sense, you don't know who's going to see you and has a hot cup of coffee, I don't know, and like just throws it at you. You don't know. It is scary. It's really scary. And I choose when and where I am, and when and where I post things, to know that if I'm posting something in a specific location, I'm not there at the time when I post it. Like, I put a lot of thought into things, and it's scary. It is really scary. How do you feel?
Honestly, I do something similar, when I'm in certain areas, I don't post about them till I leave, or till I feel like I'm safe and secure. If I'm in the West Bank, because I criticize the government here left and right, but I also criticize the Palestinian Authority left and right. And when I'm in the West Bank, I don't post that I'm there until I leave, because I don't know who's from the authorities going to come find me, God knows where.
It's funny that I feel safer there.
Yeah,
even though I share your criticism.
But maybe because I'm just like, because I don't have that, it's not as a close community in the sense of living that reality. Like, you studied in the West Bank and everything, so I feel it's a far community from mine, from within the same peoplehood. It's like someone from Alabama and California have nothing to do with each other's culturally, but they're the same people. But and I feel like there is a difference in that sense, and I can criticize even more. So I can go all at it and shit at them as much as I want, and I don't care. But then if I'm there, I'm worried, because I don't know how the dynamic work fully. I'm not there on a daily basis. I don't know who is where and how the system works, on these kind of things. Where in Israel, I know. So I know also my limits of what I can say and how I can criticize the government here and to what extent. And if I can directly go after Ben Gvir and put a post on him or not, And even after I did that, I was looking for that knock on the door. Like my mom told me I'm crazy for specifically posting something that is specifically to Ben Gvir. But I was afraid and at the same time felt like there's something that you need to say. And if I'm not going to say it, if no one's going to stand up, then who's going to stand up? And yes, there is this small minority of Jewish Israeli leftists who speak up and talk against Ben Gvir and talk against this and talk against that. But we need to have our own ability to speak up. And if we're able to do it properly, we should. But I'm always afraid. A secret that maybe like to share with you guys in the audience. 2 weeks ago, I was at a cafe in Haifa, and I'm like 90% sure the person that approached me is somebody from the Shabak. Like 90%. It was an interesting interaction, to be honest, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Someone who approached, I recognize you, let's get a coffee, let's talk. And it felt like an interrogation. It felt like Shabak conversation. So I don't know if it's true, not, but the fact that you have to think about it's because this is our reality.
Well, you have Hadeel to call now.
Exactly.
I know that I never said anything wrong, so they can ask me how many questions they want. I have nothing to hide. But again, thank you, Hadeel. If we have any problems, we'll make sure to reach out. Hopefully not. We want to create a better reality. We want to help our people and not to harm other people.
I also want to shout out I don't know if they're called an organization, but Hamle, that advocates and fights for digital Palestinian rights. We'll leave that also in the description alongside everything that you mentioned, whether it's the Adalah website, your work, and links to donate and anything where people that are listening to this can help you or further educate themselves about it.
And again, thank you to our audience for tuning in, for listening to us. Keep following us on our Instagram, and join us on Patreon. And tune in again for another episode of UTTN, the podcast.